going down. Anybody noticed how sea air tends to shrink your clothes? I find it strange that I really can't. I can't understand why, but there you are. Well, I'm afraid this is my last talk of the cruise. We're leaving on Saturday in Rome, and there'll be more speakers coming out with different subjects for you next week. So next week, while you're fine dining, just think of me at home. I'll probably be raking up leaves, and I'll be fixing all the fences that came down during the gales, and be wishing that I was back here with you. Anyway, today's subject. If you heard my talk the other day about the naming of plants, I mentioned that I help my friends with their auriculas at Chelsea. Auricula is a little alpine flower. It's a close relative of the primrose. It evolved in the Alps in Central Europe at the 1500s, when two wild primulas crossed and hybridized. It was the primula species and this one called hirsuta, and they crossed and produced these amazing plants, and collectors started to take an interest in them. They started collecting them, and they started crossing them and hybridizing them, and so they ended up with plants like this. There's absolutely nothing like it in the wild anywhere. It's really a totally man-made plant, and these enthusiasts were called florists, and they used to have their shows which they called florist feasts. And I really like to call these designer primroses. I think that sums them up really. They've evolved with all this breeding. Some have mutated. Some of the leaves have turned into petals. I mean, you shouldn't like green flowers, should you? It's totally weird, but I love them, and I think they look absolutely stunning. From the 15th century onwards, the artists took an interest in them and drew them. And when you saw those paintings by the Dutch masters in the 1600s of vases of flowers, there would always be some auriculas somewhere in the painting. When the French Huguenot weavers came over to Britain from France, when they left France because of religious persecution, they brought their auriculas with them, and they had their flower shows still, and the craze for them started to spread around this country. We fell under the spell in 1804. I got this print, and you can see in the background there an auricular theatre. This was the traditional way of showing them, and it still is. It's like a bookcase style to put them on. They're perfectly hardy, but the flowers tend to develop a powder on the leaves. It is like flour, literally, and rain tends to spoil it. So they made these theatres, so it gives them a little bit of protection just to keep the rain off. But say they're perfectly hardy; they can freeze in the ground. So as I've travelled around, I've found auricular theatres. This one was at Hetlow in Holland, and to Harlow Carr, the RHS Gardens at Harlow Carr, they have one, and at Cork Abbey in Derbyshire, the National Trust have the largest auricular theatre in the country. Little bit tatty, some of theirs, I think. But I first got into it through some neighbours of mine. Bill Lockyer on the right is a retired electrician, and his son Simon is a gardener. And they live round the corner to me. We live in Purley, just on the southern edge of London. And Bill and Simon had a house there with a fairly standard sized garden, but they called the auricular bug. Before they knew it, they had 7 glass houses in the garden. That's why happens when you get obsessed with something, isn't it? And they started taking over their neighbours' gardens and erecting glass houses there. So in the end, they rented an area in a local nursery, and they acquired one of the national collections of of auriculas. That's Bill and his wife Joan. And that's how the collection grew and grew. And they started the mail order business, and they started going to the RHS shows and exhibiting them there. And so they have got the national collection there. You may remember when Charles and Camilla got married, that they noticed in Camilla's bouquet she had some auriculas. It's not a very good picture, but they're there. But they had a new seedling come up in their greenhouse, which was very like one of those. So they wanted to name it after Camilla. So they wrote her a letter and said, can we name this auricula in your honour? And she sent back this reply. So she was pleased to give permission, and she couldn't wait to see her namesake. And this was the plant called the Duchess of Cornwall, and they raised several, and they forward them onto them. And we're hoping that Charles is now building his auricular theatre for their plants. So move on. Bill retired, and Simon, their son, took over the business with his partner Louise, and they now have their own nursery out at Upfield in East Sussex, and they're carrying on the family tradition with this with the national collection, and they still go to the shows and do the mail order. And they were invited to go to Chelsea. You have to be invited. You start off by exhibiting at the lesser shows like Hampton Court and Harrogate and shows like that. The RHS can see that you have got quality plants, then you will be invited to come and exhibit at Chelsea. And we start the year really in midwinter, where we repot the plants. They get a bit weedy, they need to be repotted and split up. And so they're an alpine, so it's a cold job. But many of us go and help in the winter, because it's quite a boring, lonely job just on your own there. So we go along and help with the splitting up of them. For Chelsea, we need single plants in a pot, and the auriculas multiply by pushing up all these little offsets all the way around. It's an alpine plant, so it wants a very free-draining soil, lots of grit and lots of perlite, and some leaf mould as well, and a general-purpose compost. And no one's going to be allowed to use compost with any peat from next year, are they? And this is a big problem for many of the growers, because that peat does hold on to the moisture rather well. But I say, if you have auriculas, it's free drain. They come from the mountains where it rains, the water runs straight away through, and then it's gone again. So they don't want to sit in water. So I say we tease off the offsets. That's the only way you can get a perfect reproduction of the mother plant. If you grow them from seeds, they're variable. You don't know what you're going to get. But if you take the offset off, then you have got a clone of the original parent, and we take them off and we plant them up as stock. Our biggest enemy is the vine weevil. They come along and they lay their eggs on the soil close to the plant, and then the maggots hatch out, and they live on the roots of the plant. And the first you know that you've got an infestation of vine weevils is when the plant falls over and it's got no roots at all. So we're on the lookout for those as well, and we spray them with a drop of insecticide if we see it. But again, they're stopping so many of these insecticides, so that's getting more and more difficult as well as the insecticides are withdrawn. So I say that they're perfectly hardy. They can sit outside. They can absolutely freeze in their pots during the winter, and then come back to life again, and it doesn't do them any harm at all. And it is the blooming which is our biggest problem, because their plants want to flower in April, and as you know, Chelsea is in May. So we're always looking for the coldest spot, but always hoping for a really cold winter. We're the only people that want a cold winter, and we're putting them in the drafty spots. Anything we can do to hold them back. Chelsea, it is the second week of April that it's held, and it's held in the grounds of the Royal Hospital, the home of the Chelsea pensioners. It's a stupid place to have it because it's not very big. It's on these playing fields around the pensioners' residence. So it's not a perfect place for a show. There's not good access there. You see that memorial there is for back in the 1800s, and that memorial becomes the most prestigious site in the Grand Marquis. It's usually Hilliers have that site. They call that the monument site, but it is all around there. So about 3 weeks before the show starts, the contractors start arriving to build the show gardens. And I said, it's a crazy place. There's just one little ring road that goes right the way around the site, and it is usually permanently jammed with lorries for 3 weeks because they can't get by each other. They've got to wait and shuffle around, and everyone gets very, very frustrated because they can't get on. But it's been traditionally held on that site, and the RHS want to hold it there, and that's where it happens. But for the 3 weeks coming up before the show, there is the build, and it is amazing what is done just on football pitches basically, and then in 3 weeks, if you can pour about £500,000 on that ground, you can end up with a show garden. For us in the floral marquee, we usually arrive on the Friday before the show is open to the press on the Monday. We try and bring about 300 plants with us if we can. We'll need 200 for the actual display, but we're trying to find the ones that's perfect for when the judging comes, and then later in the week some can go over, so we can replace any that go over. So we have all of our props that we bring in on a van, and we are allocated our area in the marquee. We drape it in black because that seems to set the colours of the flowers off, and we build our own auricular theatre. We bring it in pieces, put it together, and give it a coat of quick-drying blackboard paint at the end. Being the RHS Health and Safety, we were asked to wear steel cap boots the whole time, and most of the time we're working with no shoes on at all, but rules are rules. It's high-vis jackets and you're supposed to be wearing your steel cap boots. And then we come to selecting the best plants, and we transfer them out of, they're usually kept on black plastic pots in the nursery, but we put them into these wonderful old Victorian terracotta pots. They're probably worth more than the plants actually. They're becoming more and more scarce, and we go over with paintbrushes and dust them off and preen them, and you get them looking their absolute best. Everything has to be labelled. The RHS insists that every plant has its correct name and is labelled properly. So when we decide what we're going to have, then it's finding all the labels or making out new labels ready for when the plants go up. All around you there, I say it's a bit like being in a beehive. There's people everywhere absolutely grafting away. There's the wonderful scent in the air. There's a terrific atmosphere. There's a lot of tension in the air, but there's a terrific atmosphere as well. So we start the staging. Some of the plants we put into these old picture frames, which really I think sets them off beautifully. We inherited them from another grower before us who had them at Chelsea, and so I think he's been coming backwards and forwards to Chelsea for over 50 years. But those terracotta pots do set them off, I think you must agree. As I said before, they had me there because I've got good knees and I can do some of the climbing up and down because we're endlessly changing them. So I got my picture in the Times, front page of the Times, would you believe? They got my best side. But the press do love us. And we had some copper kettles on the display as well. Apparently in the Victorian times, when they had their florist feast with the plants, they would give a copper kettle as the first prize. So we'll see if we can get some copper kettles. So we put a little advert in the local horticultural society. Has anybody who's got any copper kettles they don't want? And we were absolutely inundated with them. It was amazing how many people had them. There then follows a lot of discussions or arguing about which colour should go with which, and trying to get the heights right. So there's a lot of shifting around until, it's not very sharp, is it? Until we decide what is going to be the correct order. I've been watching on. And there's double forms as well as the classic single ones. And all around us there are everyone else, as I said, is grafting away. But particularly nearby we have the Caribbean stands. And they fly all their plants in from the Caribbean, and you hear all sorts of dramas when the plants are held up at Heathrow or they're stopped in customs, and you see these dramas going on. But the Caribbean islands are very, very competitive. They say if you don't win gold, you failed. So there's a terrific tension from all those guys and ladies there. TV people are absolutely everywhere all the time. There's a massive TV coverage, isn't there? So everywhere there are cables and cameras and pieces being recorded, and throughout the day you see all sorts of celebs around. There's Imelda Staunton there and her husband Jim Carter. He was Mr. Carson in Downton. They're great gardeners, and they were recording a piece for daytime television there. And you see the celebrity gardeners like Dermot Cabin. But in recent years, the RHS have been having trouble filling the marquee because nurserymen more and more are not coming. The basic problem is that they don't make any money out of the show because of that silly thing with the traffic. Once the show starts, you can't get any traffic in and out. It's shut to traffic. And all the big shows like Hampton Court, they're able to sell plants and then keep restocking as the show goes on. But here you can't bring any vehicles on or restock. So you're allowed to take orders or for mail order, and you can sell seeds and small things, but you can't sell plants, so you can't make much money. And it costs a lot of money if you're a nursery coming from somewhere way out of the country. You've got to pay hotel bills for your staff for well over the week that you're setting up and being there. You've got to pay parking charges, and you get the prestige of winning a gold medal maybe, but you're not making any money. And these days, things are fairly tight. So I've noticed that more and more in the Great Marquee, there's bigger displays, and they're making gardens in the marquee as well. Not so many nurserymen. I don't know what the answer is, but it is a problem. But and the problem is having the show in central London, and obviously the RHS want to keep it there because of the prestige and the price that they can ask for the tickets. There were floral artistes in hard hats putting up their displays. There's wonderful sweet peas being put together there. Alan Titchmarsh is always around here. He's a lovely chap. I mean, TV he comes across as a very amiable sort of chap, and he's been going there for years. He knows absolutely everybody, and he can, if you've got a problem or need something fixed or some advice, You just say a word to Alan and he knows what to do, or it's fixed. And all day long there are interesting people coming by. This is a bit of a montage of over several years' shows, but I just sort of selected some of the pictures I thought that might interest you. Rachel Detain there, and, Leslie Joseph with Joan, and Joe Swift with Bill. We tend to wear bowler hats to try and look a bit Victorian. I don't really think that they suit me, but we're a bit of a novelty, and sort of TV hones in on us. There's Simon there doing an interview. He hates doing interviews, but yes, if they want you, you've got to do it. And here he is with Carol Klein. If you heard me talk the other day, these TV people are really lovely people, but they're always saying, have you got any spare plants? They're always on the cadge, have you got anything you don't want? And I'm sorry if you've heard the story before, but Sophie Rayworth came along and she wanted to buy some plants from us. And I said, fine, but she'd forgotten her purse. So we gave her some, but she came back the following year, got out her phone and said, look, this is how well they did, and how much do I owe you from last year? So we warmed to her, so we gave her some more. She's a very keen gardener. Her parents are as well. They live in Richmond in London, and for many years they've got a big house and garden there, and they opened their gardens under the Yellow Book scheme. I haven't seen it advertised since COVID, but it is apparently a magnificent garden in Richmond. So, relief is on their faces. We're nearly all done. Well, we've been grafting away in the Great Marquee. Outside, it's Chelsea in bloom. And this is an event that happens simultaneously with the flower show in this area all around Sloane Square. There's all those very expensive shops there, and they have a competition for the best dressed shops on the Sunday before. They've got all these florists up there decorating the shops. So, and then for the whole of the week, it's just a wonderland around Sloane Square. So if you don't want to fork out to go to see Chelsea itself, go up and see Chelsea in bloom. And you can see these wonderful displays that they put on for absolutely free. You know I love signs. I haven't found an excuse to show many signs in here, but when I was up there, I found they had a few vans with some nice signs on them. But this Chelsea in bloom seems to get bigger and bigger every year, with the shops becoming more and more competitive and the displays getting bigger and bigger. Even the estate agents have got in on it. Back in the Marquee, we're all done. The judging starts at around 6 o'clock on the Sunday, and then it goes on into the Monday morning as well, and we have to move away and leave our stand to the judges. So on Monday it's press day, and that's suits on for press day. We're still making the papers, and at 4 o'clock on the press day, the royal family arrive, and the Queen used to come, and she hardly missed a show. She would come in and she'd walk straight past us. She wouldn't give us a second glance, because she was always interested in the Commonwealth exhibits. So she'd always be straight off to see what the Caribbean islands had done, and of course they never failed to please. But we always thought one year she'd stop, but she never did. Everywhere you look around the Marquee, it is perfection. And of course, there's always the pensioners around here. So, as I say, it's in the grounds of the Royal Hospital, so they are always there. Um, we were on a cruise a few years ago, and one of the pensioners was on there, and on formal nights he always came in his scarlet outfit, and I think he had his picture taken with every single lady on that cruise because he always looked so well. I heard a talk by the governor of the Royal Hospital, and he was saying he took some of the pensioners on a trip to New York, and they all turned up at Heathrow. He turned up in his suit. Pensioners all came in their scarlet uniforms. They were immediately upgraded. So the governor of the Royal Hospital was sat back in tourist class, where all his charges were moved to the front. So it's a good tip: if you want to get upgraded, get yourself a pensioner's outfit. So anyway, after the Queen has been, of course, it is the gala evening, champagne flowing, with Simon there with Joanna Lumley, larking around with the police. There's usually a huge police presence there as well. So these days, security is very, very tight, and the whole week there's all sorts of security drills and things that are run. But Tuesday morning, you come in, and it is when the results are out, and you rush in to see how you've done. And we had got gold, and it was the 7th time consecutive that we had won a gold medal for our displays. So they're two very, very happy people, I think. And I'm there basking in the shared glory. You just feel a bit like you've won the Olympics when you get that gold medal. And then, of course, the public are allowed in, and it is absolutely heaving. So it's a very small site, and they're charging about £80 or £90 a head to come in there. To really see the show, you watch it on television. That's where you get the best views, of course, but everyone comes for the atmosphere. And if we've been featured on TV, then everyone knows about us, and they make a beeline for us, and we usually get absolutely mobbed. I think we've probably got the smallest stand there in the marquee, but I think we're one of the most photographed. Everyone wants to come and take pictures of us. And we're there for the whole week. I feel like I turn into a parrot because everyone wants to know how to grow them. So you say, yeah, you do this. 2 minutes later, you say the same thing. I'll get a tape machine and just play it. But everyone is so fascinated by those beautiful plants. Carol Klein came back again with her heavily pregnant daughter to show her daughter the display. Say everywhere in that marquee, it is horticulture at its peak. It's this chap, the Welshman Medwin Williams, who grows these huge vegetables. He got 13 consecutive gold medals. I think his son has now taken over his firm and produces these enormous vegetables. They probably taste horrible, but the judges don't taste them, do they? They're all just judged visually. There was this display of amaryllis a few years ago, but from a Dutch company, and every evening after the show was closed, you had to get a ladder out and go and pour water into every one of those stems to keep the flowers going. So many plants that are out of season as well. How they manipulate them to get them there on time. Proteas come from South Africa, of course. When I was talking about my favourite gardens around the world, I mentioned Kirstenbosch Gardens in Cape Town. And Kirstenbosch have been coming to the show for over 30 years. And again, their display is always absolutely fantastic. I love that image of Nelson Mandela. And it was made entirely out of the seed heads of proteas. Isn't that clever? And then outside, the show gardens, where I was saying you see what you can do if you've got £500,000 to spend. I think these are really like film sets. I mean, they're just made in 3 weeks, just for the show. And if you had them longer in the year, then they wouldn't last. But they're just made for Chelsea. And the judges judge these. They have to send a brief before you build the garden. So they look at the brief and then they look at what you have actually achieved. And it has to be plants that are happy together. You can't sort of have desert plants and alpine plants all in one garden. They've got to be plants that would normally be seen together. And of course they've got to be of the finest quality as well. And if you can achieve all those things, then you get a gold medal. And there's no limit to the number of gold medals that they can allocate. It's just if you deserve it. And as the week goes on, so the crowds still come. There's a row of shops there. More and more, they're having weeds, and I love this. This was called This Is Yorkshire, and as well as winning gold medals from the judges, they have the People's Choice. And in 2018, this won the People's Choice. Is it a garden or is it a piece of landscape? I'm not sure. And it's very, very clever to be able to make that in just a short time, isn't it, with weeds and flowers all mixed in together. And the head gardener of Britain, Monty, is there. He isn't so gregarious as the other gardeners that wander around. I think he's a very shy man, and so he's not a great big people. I think he's good on television, but he doesn't like mixing too much. There was a garden there a few years ago, designed by James May. Remember, one of the presenters of Top Gear. He made a plasticine garden. He made all the flowers out of plasticine, and I thought it was rather clever because the RHS gave him a plasticine gold medal for his efforts. And another People's Choice was this one, the Chelsea, it was a soldier's dream of Blighty. It was a sort of Chelsea pensioners' vision of what a Devonshire pub could look like, and that won the People's Choice. And another nice story about the pensioners. They said we're in their garden really, and they wanted to put up a mobile phone mast in the grounds. And the pensioners were a bit worried about this, so they decided the phone company should have a meeting with the pensioners and tell them about this phone mast and what they were going to do. So they had the meeting, and at the end, one old chap got very slowly to his feet, and he said, "It won't make us sterile, will it?" And of course they have lady pensioners there as well, so it could make a difference. We move on to Saturday at 4 o'clock, and they go up on the balcony there, Sophie Rayworth again in the purple, and they ring a bell, and the show is over, and the sell-off happens, and it's absolute mayhem when that happens. I hate it because the whole place is ripped apart. We have to hide some of the plants that we want to take back to the nursery as stock, and then we sell the other plants for about £5 or £6 each. We take them out of those pots first before we sell them when people have them. But we have to be careful for theft. There's arms coming in and out all over the place, and I say it is frantic for about an hour. It just breaks my heart. And all around you, you see people buying plants. They buy these great big delphiniums, and you see them getting on the buses and on the underground trains. And I'm sure these plants have all been sort of forced for the show. They've been there for a week, and they're past their best. But there's this sort of mania that overtakes everybody, that they've got to have a piece of Chelsea to take home with them. They call this the Lazarus effect, when people come in wheelchairs and then suddenly find that they can walk. their purchases away with them. More ladies up to the same tricks. They look very happy. But slowly it's all over. In about 2 hours, you know, it is stripped. And at last we can celebrate. We get out the champagne and have a well-deserved drink. You'll notice that Simon and Louise are no longer with us. There's another flower show in Kent in that same weekend, and so they always go off to that flower show where they can make some money to recover their costs of doing this. So they leave us behind to do the clearing up. Within an hour of the public leaving, the dust carts are in, and there's so much stuff is thrown away. So I can my pocket's actually full of bits and pieces that I pick up. Obviously, the RHS are trying to be more and more sustainable. Nearly all of those big gardens now have a second life when after the show they are moved to somewhere else. That Chelsea Pensioners Garden that I was talking about, I discovered it in a pub garden in Kent at the Flying Horse. Why? It wasn't quite as beautiful as it was at Chelsea, but it was good to see that it has a second life. But that's 3 hours after the Bella's run, the place is absolutely ripped to pieces, and we've got to get away. Well, I told you that road gets absolutely jammed, and if we waited to bring our van in, we could be there all night by the time everyone's got their vehicles in and start loading up. So there's Joan Lockyer there. We take all our display apart, and then we carry it outside onto the Thames embankment. We pile it all up on the embankment. It's a red line there. But when we're ready, we call the van round. We hurl everything into the van. We keep a couple of plants back in case a couple of traffic wardens come along, and we can bribe them, and we're off home, totally exhausted. 3 weeks later, back at the Royal Hospital, it's Founders Day. The hospital was founded by Charles II, and he hid an oak tree, so they cover his statue there with oak leaves in his honour, and the guards are on parade. It was that third week of June, absolutely the hottest day of the year, I think, and the pensioners are all there in their greatcoats and hats. There were Grenadier Guardsmen collapsing with the heat, and the old boys were marching up and down without a care in the world. And there's always a member of the Royals that comes to inspect them. It was the Queen that year. But just behind where I took that picture is the showground, and that's how it looks with the memorial there. And it's just waiting for the grass all to be re-sown again for the football pitches. It's going to be dug up again the following April when the show happens again. But then, of course, COVID came along after 2018, and there wasn't a show for 2 years. It then came back as an autumn show, and we went there with succulents. We won another gold, but that's another story. There were you came back to spring shows the following years, and we had warm springs, and we couldn't. All our flowers bloomed again in April, and we had nothing for May, so we couldn't enter then. Tragically, our dear friend Bill died. He died of a brain tumour, poor man. He didn't get COVID, but he died. That was really, really sad. My friends Simon and Louise got really busy during COVID, doing a lot of propagating. In fact, they propagated themselves with baby Jodie. I think that's called potty training in a big way. So she is learning the business from the ground up, I guess. They're still undecided about entering next year's show. Again, they're the only people that want a really cold winter. They want it to be freezing really hard, so it holds the plants back. They are contemplating investing in a cold store again, which would help and keep the plants back, but again, it's all down to financing. But if you fancy growing some of these amazing plants, just Google Lockyer's auriculas, and you'll get onto their website, and they do them by mail. Other growers are available, of course, but yeah, it's a slippery slope. If you buy one, you could end up with 7 glass houses in your garden to house them all. But you know, I love it there, so I really hope that they come back next year and I can go along and enjoy it. And baby Jodie has inherited her granddad's old bowler, and she is raring to go. So hopefully you'll see us there next year. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.